Alrighty, YouTube, Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. Obviously, first of all, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. And of course, a Happy New Year. But man, what a way to get your ass kicked on national television in front of, you could probably argue that this was one of the most watched games of the NFL season. I mean, especially with it being on Christmas Day, of course, and being the primetime game. But man, Niners go into this game with really, I mean, the better team through in and throughout. Baltimore, I'm not taking anything away. Obviously, first of all, you got to give kudos to the Baltimore Ravens. They came in, they conquered in San Francisco, cross country on Christmas Day. That's pretty hard to do, but they came in, did exactly what they needed to do to win this game. So you got to give them kudos first off, and obviously get that out of the way first. But either way, I mean, the game starts with Purdy just hitting Kittle like 3 times on the first drive. We're marching down the field. We get into the red zone. Purdy throws a ball to Deebo Samuel on a cross route that, it looked open on the replay, but obviously Kyle Hamilton, one of the better safeties in the league, was preying on Deebo, sitting right there at the back end, and intercepted it. And I'll be the first to say that you can definitely, like, that one's on Brock Purdy. Like, he didn't see Kyle Hamilton covering or kind of preying on Deebo, and it was a bad mistake. Purdy knew it as soon as he threw the ball, and obviously Baltimore goes down. I believe that was the same drive where the 49ers were able to get the safety on the Lamar Jackson intentional grounding call, and then obviously the turnovers continued to happen. Brock Purdy, on his second interception, I believe that was the one that was tipped on the screen throw to, I believe it may have been Deebo Samuel, maybe McCaffrey, but it was a screen pass to, I believe, Deebo, and obviously Baltimore's defensive back, I can't remember who jumped up and made the play. I think Stevens or something like that, but he jumps up, he deflects the pass up into the air, and unfortunately Baltimore obviously comes down with the interception. So I mean, another play where great defensive call by Baltimore to, Baltimore seemed like they knew that play was coming, and they executed it perfectly, of course. But Purdy throws it, it gets tipped, intercepted. So obviously right now we're at, 2 picks, by, I believe this was not even in the second quarter yet, may have been in the second quarter. But yeah, man, I mean, and then on the third one, he's scrambling. The offensive line, I thought, was pretty poor all game long, letting Baltimore's pass rush get to him. And then on the third one, he's scrambling, trying to, escape the pressure. He throws one to, I believe, George Kittle. George Kittle was, he was pretty heavily covered, but the ball, again, gets tipped up into the air, unfortunately, and Baltimore, gets their third pick of the game. And then on the fourth play, of course, on the fourth interception, Purdy gets hit from his blind side on the right side. So I guess it wouldn't have been his blind side, but he gets hit from the right side. And, he's trying to hit McCaffrey on a Texas route. And obviously, with the force of, I believe it was Clowney that hit him on that one. Purdy, it was a bad throw. Again, he got hit when he was throwing the ball. And, that's the fourth pick. And then Brock eventually gets hurt, of course. He gets ruled out, or not ruled out for the game, but he was questionable to return. He got shaken up on a play. I believe they said he got another stinger. It's not something that's going to be lingering, from what Kyle Shanahan said to reporters after the game, so that's always good. So just a stinger for Brock Purdy, but during in those current circumstances, like, there's no point to bring back Brock Purdy back in the game. I know, we were only down by, I believe, 2 scores at that point in time, or maybe it was down 3 scores, because obviously Darnold came in and threw the touchdown to Ronnie Bell. But no, really, I mean, no point to leave Brock Purdy out there. At that point in time, the game was over. When you're playing a team like Baltimore and, there's 4 interceptions, Baltimore's defense causes 4 turnovers. With a good team like that, it's and a great coaching staff like that, it's hard to come back from something like that. So you just didn't execute. That's really the moral of the story here. Like, there was no point in the game where I felt that something was going right, or there was no point in the game where the 49ers were able to, like, I guess, show their true identity and who they were. And again, credit to Baltimore and that defense. Baltimore came prepared. They executed to perfection. Mike McDonald, I believe, is the Baltimore defensive coordinator. So kudos to him, of course. I mean, he called a great game. They attacked Purdy's. They attacked Purdy, got pressure on him. We're dialing up. They were dialing up, coverages that I don't even know if Brock Purdy's seen before. So I don't know. I mean, again, there's no excuses. Like, Brock Purdy obviously didn't show up, but I'm not blaming every single interception that he threw on him. I only think 2 of those interceptions that he threw were arguably on him, and that was obviously the first and the second interception. Again, the other 2 were just kind of, he got hit on one, and unfortunately on the third one, he throws a ball to Kittle, and the ball flies up in the air and it gets picked off. So, I mean, the luck really wasn't on our side when it comes to that. But again, no excuse. Brock Purdy did not play to perfection. I don't know if he's going to be the MVP anymore. I know Lamar Jackson, I believe, now is the front runner to win MVP. I still think Christian McCaffrey, if you're not going to give it to Brock Purdy, it should still be Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion. But again, we know how the league works when it comes to giving quarterbacks awards. And I'm not going to sit up here and say that I don't think Lamar deserves it, because obviously what he's been able to do with the amount of injuries that Baltimore's had this year, nothing to really say about that other than, that kind of shows who Lamar is as a leader and as a quarterback in this league. But no, I mean, again, I think it's more so like the 49ers just didn't show up. They didn't execute. That's literally, it's as simple as that. There were too many turnovers. Again, I mean, when Brock Purdy had thrown the 3rd pick, the 49ers were going into half only down, 7 points, 6 points or something like that. Like, it was still a 1-score game after Brock Purdy had thrown those 3 interceptions. So, I mean, that obviously shows how good of a defense and how good of a team, we have all in all. So, obviously, that's, you got to take the positive out of that. Like, we were able to hold Baltimore in the red zone despite, Brock Purdy's turnover. So, again, I mean, when you throw 4 interceptions, against a team like Baltimore, you're not going to win the game. Again, going into halftime after 3 interceptions that Brock had thrown, we still had a chance to win that football game. It was just, again, turnovers continued to happen. There were too many, unexecuted drives, way too many turnovers in a row. Baltimore, again, our defense was able to hold them in the red zone for the most part, but at some point in time, enough is enough, and 4 was simply just enough for Baltimore to take the game and run with it. So I'm not worried by any means. Again, it does suck that Purdy obviously is probably not going to win the MVP now, but again, I'm not discrediting, like, just because Brock Purdy may not win the MVP, I'm not going to sit up here and say that he's still not been one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback all season long. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's entered the conversation with that, but, quarterback struggle, man, at the end of the day. Like, there's Niner fans, I've been saying that, Purdy's been exposed, and obviously, Eagles fans chirping about Purdy being exposed. Like, what about Jalen Hurts? Like, that guy's, clearly, if it wasn't for the tush push, he's not having a good season. But again, I'm not going to sit up here and dog the Eagles or the Cowboys. Those games are behind us, of course. But at the end of the day, quarterbacks are going to struggle. Patrick Mahomes has been struggling all season. All the great quarterbacks in the league have struggled. Um, you know, but again, at the end of the day, I think it's more telling how that quarterback in particular bounces back. There's no doubt in my mind that Brock Purdy will learn from something like this. There's no doubt in my mind that he'll be able to bounce back from that. Again, I mean, there's a reason, Purdy's having the season that he's having. He's struggled in games. We've seen it against, Cincinnati. We've seen it against Minnesota and Cleveland and obviously now Baltimore. But each and every time the guy bounces back, he'll have a great game following this, I'm sure. I know we got Washington up next. So, there's no doubt in my mind that Purdy will finish the season strong, and there's no other quarterback, I wouldn't trade Purdy going into the playoffs for anybody else. Obviously, the team still believes in him. I would imagine that the fans do. Again, quarterback struggle. It's I'm glad this happened now than, in January during the playoff game or in a bigger game like the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship. So, the Niners have been humbled. I don't think that they went in underestimating this Baltimore team at all. Again, if Brock Purdy doesn't throw 4 interceptions and if the ball doesn't get tipped up in the air on 2 of those, I still think the 49ers win that game. Like, it really came down to Brock Purdy throwing those interceptions. Like, obviously, when you throw interceptions, 4 of them, that's going to be a deciding factor in who wins the game. I don't think Brock Purdy will ever have a game like that again, especially this season. But I don't see him having a game like that, for a very long time. Like, that was the worst game of Brock Purdy's career, probably. So, at the end of the day, again, I still have plenty of faith. Brock Purdy is that guy. He is him. He is the real deal. There's no worrisome there, for me at least. And I guarantee you the team feels the same way. Like, there's a reason Brock Purdy has been in the MVP conversation and has had the season that he's had. It's been his ability to bounce back and to be better than he was, before that game he struggled in. So, we didn't execute. Like, that's literally what it comes down to. Kudos to Baltimore. They played their asses off. Their defense is insane. Kyle Hamilton, hopefully everything's okay with him. I know he suffered a knee injury, but he's a Notre Dame guy, of course, and I live in Indiana, and, Kyle Hamilton's always been, even in college, one of, the more fun players to watch. So hopefully nothing serious with Kyle Hamilton moving forward for Baltimore. Hopefully for the Niners, I know Trent Williams was put out of this game with a groin injury, so hopefully everything's, fine with Trent and it's nothing too serious. And again, Kyle already confirmed that there's nothing telling of Brock Purdy's injury that could be lingering or a more serious injury than it already is. And it's not a serious injury. It's just a stinger. Again, he suffered one last week, I believe, against Arizona. And obviously he came back in. So Brock Purdy probably could have came back in. Actually, I can almost guarantee you he wanted to come back in and, he wasn't in pain anymore. Because obviously last week he said that, with stingers, as time goes on, it kind of just gets better. And obviously last week he talked about how, as time went on after he suffered the stinger, he was able to come back in and, there was no pain at all. So it's not like he couldn't come back in the game. But again, at that point in time of the game, facing a Baltimore team like that, you might as well keep him out. And obviously, just make sure he's fine and don't take that risk. But other than Trent Williams, obviously Eric Armstead didn't play this week. Hopefully he is back next week. I know Javon Hargrave was obviously able to play tonight. Jason Verrett actually made an appearance. He actually let up a touchdown, but either way, he was activated before this game to the 53-man roster and seen some action. So obviously good to see him out there, of course. Don't like the, touchdown he gave up, but guy's probably rusty. I mean, he's been on Houston's practice squad all year. He's, coming off of a pretty severe injury. But, other than that, I believe for the most part, the 49ers are able to come out of this game pretty healthy. Obviously other than Trent Williams, but the hope is that everything's, going to be fine with him. I'll obviously continue to keep you guys updated on that situation. But yeah, man, we move on. Like we're 11-4. We still have the number 1 seed, and I think that's what really matters most. As long as we have that number 1 seed going into the playoffs, I'm taking the Niners up against anybody in the league. And again, I can almost guarantee you that there's not going to be another Brock Purdy game this year that looks like that. Again, not every interception was on him. Did he, show up to play? Absolutely not. But again, I mean, quarterbacks are going to struggle. Baltimore had a great game plan, so kudos to them. Lamar obviously is probably going to win the MVP. And I'm not, again, saying that he doesn't deserve it, because what he's been able to do with that Baltimore team, and obviously going into San Francisco and putting up what he put up and performing at the level he performed at, that's telling about the type of player he is. His number 1 options out, one of his, their starting running back was put out. Their backup running back that was starting to come along with Keaton Mitchell was put out. And obviously now Kyle Hamilton's injured. So again, hopefully everything's cool with Kyle Hamilton. Obviously he's emerging as one of the better safeties in the league and great player. Had some nice words about Purdy earlier on in the week. So yeah, hopefully everything's good with Kyle Hamilton. But again, kudos to the Baltimore Ravens and obviously any of their fans watching this. You guys showed up. The Niners didn't. Again, obviously, I'm hoping we see you guys again, maybe, in February. Not trying to jinx anything, but I'd love to see that, match up again. Definitely isn't, that may not be the last time the 49ers see them this year. So obviously, Lamar, his ability to escape the pocket like that killed us tonight. He was able to extend plays, make something out of nothing like he did last week. He's tough, man. He's tough to defend. He's tough to game plan for. But again, no excuse. Like, again, I think the 49ers team, all in all, coming into this game, we were the more superior team. We were the more healthy team. But Baltimore showed up. They came with a chip on their shoulder. Traveled cross country to San Francisco, who was arguably going into the game the hottest team in the NFL. They were rolling. They have a quarterback that's leading the race in the MVP, and they came to San Fran and beat us. So I got nothing but respect for Baltimore. The 49ers have some things to clean up, but thank God it's, this is happening now instead of possibly in January or going, hopefully, the 49ers are able to get to a Super Bowl. Hopefully it wasn't in a game like the Super Bowl where the season's on the line. But again, the 49ers have to finish strong. They have to get the number 1 seed on lock. I thought Christian McCaffrey, obviously that guy showed up again, was running all over the Baltimore Ravens defense. I was kind of wondering why we didn't attack the run game more in the beginning. We almost attacked it too hard when it was too late. But yeah, McCaffrey, doing it in the receiving game again today, had the touchdown, of course. He's automatic when it comes to, being in the red zone. I believe he was well over 100 yards rushing as well. So the guy shows up week in and week out. Again, he's my MVP if you're going to give me one at this point in time, or if you want me to give you one at this point in time. But again, it's probably going to be Lamar. It's a quarterback award, and I think Lamar probably submitted that, especially going into San Francisco and beating us the way he did. But again, if Purdy doesn't throw those 4 picks, the 49ers win that game. I think if Purdy just limits, 2 picks in that game, I think the 49ers win that game. After 3 interceptions Purdy threw, we were only down by 1 score. I think not even 1 score. I believe it was like 5 or 6 points. So So obviously kudos to the defense as well. Like they, you know, they got stops when we needed them most, but again, the offense just didn't execute. It was turnover after turnover after turnover, it felt like. But again, I'm not worried about this Niners team whatsoever. We're still the best team in the NFC. Obviously, I'm going to continue to say we're the best team in the NFL. But in games like this, you got to learn from it. Take lessons, not losses. Get ready for the Commanders. Move on from this. Don't let this sit in our heads because, again, what matters most is January and obviously February if you're fortunate enough to get to the Super Bowl. So the 49ers, I don't think will dwell on this by any means. I think they'll bounce back and finish the season strong. The biggest thing, though, you got to win out from here on out. You got to win out and get that number 1 seed. I think that's what the Niners are obviously probably focused on the most. And then once you get that number 1 seed, obviously, it's do or die at that point. And you're at home. You get the bye week. And that's big, obviously, for potentially getting to a Super Bowl. Getting that week off and getting that, first round bye is massive. So, I'm not worried. Purdy will be fine. He's going to bounce back. He's a great quarterback. He is the real deal. I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about this team at all. It was a wake-up call. I'm glad it came now than later on down the road. Sucks that it had to come on Christmas, of course. Kind of made, Christmas a little bad in a way. But at the end of the day, man, again, I'm not worried. This team will bounce back. I know that. And again, worry about getting the number 1 seed, and then at that point, it's do or die. And I'm, again, putting this team up against anybody, especially with home field advantage. They're still very much Super Bowl contenders by any means. You still, you're still the number 1 team in the NFC. And again, if it's not the turnovers, I think the 49ers win that game. But again, kudos to the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, I'll be on here tomorrow talking about the game balls and whatnot. But brutal loss tonight. But again, I have no doubt in my mind that this team's going to bounce back and not let it phase them by any means. So, go Niners as always. Obviously sucks. I believe the final score was like 33-19. I'll continue to keep you guys updated on obviously Trent Williams' injury and Brock Purdy's status. Obviously, there's nothing to really worry about with Brock Purdy though. And then obviously, I thought Eric Armstead would be able to play tonight. I guess he wasn't able to play, so hopefully he's able to, be back next week versus the Commanders. But yeah, on to the next. At the end of the day, this is a game that didn't matter the most. They lost to a great team. Baltimore's number 1 in the AFC for a reason. But again, there's, we could potentially see them again. And when we see them again, it could very well be for all the glory and to hoist the Lombardi. That's the hope, of course. So get them next time. Kudos to Baltimore, though, of course. They played a great game. San Francisco didn't show up. They didn't execute. And that's that. So Niners lose 33-19 on Christmas Day. Sucks, but again, we'll be back. We'll learn from this, and we'll be fine. So, as always, go Niners. Let me know your guys' thoughts, obviously, on the game in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys in the next one.